What's going on, guys? While it looks like a very green day here beside me on TradingView's heat map, you'll see that risk on is actually selling off. A lot of the Dow stocks, a lot of the risk off stocks are doing relatively good. Look at the banking stocks. We have a lot of names in the green here. But when you go to tech, when you go to a lot of the more risky stocks, you'll see that they're deep in the red actually today. And the Bitcoin miners are currently just a sea of red, with the exception of Wolf. But you'll see that, we're deep in the red right now. We've got Bitfarms 8-9% down, Applied Digital 8% down, Hive 10% down, Cleanspark down almost 8%. They did have a convertible offering news, so we're going to talk about that, what's going on on the chart, as well as Bitcoin's chart. It looks like it might be breaking its 50 MA on the weekly. Our last week's candle was able to hold, but this one's starting to look rough. We do have a couple of days, of course, until the candle ends, but we need to see this recover and fast. You can see that our last weekly candle was quickly recovered right at the end, at that kind of weekend rally that we saw last weekend. And that got us out of the hot water. That got us out from under the 50 MA, which we have been utilizing as a support this entire cycle. You'll see that when we come down to it, we get a bounce and a retest. Bounce, retest. We got our bounce here, and this is our test. It looks like we're starting to fail it. Here's our current weekly candle under the 50 MA. We need to see this regain it back over. We do not want to see it flip and become resistance like we have seen in the prior two cycles, where we break under, then it becomes a resistance, breaks under, becomes a resistance. On a positive note, we're very close to seeing a death cross, which doesn't sound positive until you look and see that Bitcoin on every death cross this cycle has seen a massive run. Its last death cross marked a bottom. The prior one marked a bottom. And the one before that, yes, also marked a bottom. If you buy on the flash of the death cross, you tend to buy the bottom, tend to buy the low during that period. If we're going to get a death cross in a couple days, this might be our low right around here. But I also think it's important to keep an eye on the weekly candles. Can we stay above it on the 50 MA, or do we start breaking down under it, showing more weakness? Preferably, we'd see our death cross within a couple days, and we get a bounce from this weekly candle, so we regain above the 50 MA, and use it as a launch pad to blast off like we did in prior times. I mean, look at it. The last time we bounced off that 50 MA, we got a roughly 50% run. And the time before we got another bounce from the 50 MA, we saw a about 100% run. If we can see something in between these, Bitcoin will finish at 150K this cycle, but we need that bounce on the weekly candle. I think that is extremely important to see. If we break under the 50 and see a candle close under the 50, I think that would be bad news, and it'll be important to watch it as we flirt with the 50 MA. Now, I do want to talk about some Cleanspark news. One reason why this has been very red lately, they announced an upsize and the pricing of their 1.15 billion convertible note offering. And you might be wondering, well, what does this mean? It essentially means dilution. That's why it's tanking. Of course, many of you know that since November 2024, they have touted that they haven't diluted. They have been utilizing their Bitcoin to fund future growth, which has been fantastic, not seeing them dilute in all that time. But we knew it was inevitable. These companies dilute to thrive. These companies dilute to try to surpass their peers. Cleanspark, if you didn't know, was the most diluted Bitcoin miner in the 2020 cycle. This is what brought them so close to Mara and Riot, which at the beginning of that cycle were leagues ahead of Cleanspark as Bitcoin miners. So while of course dilution, no one wants dilution, it can tend to be a double-edged sword at times. Of course, us shareholders don't want dilution, but what you also want is your company to thrive and grow and get bigger. And sometimes that is a lever they can pull to get bigger and grow and thrive, especially during times of unprofitability. Now, looking at this news, I won't read this whole thing and bore you with the details, but this convertible offering is expected to close on November 13, and they expect the proceeds from this convertible offering to be about 1.13 billion, of which 460 million of that they want to repurchase shares of their own stock, but the remaining, the nearly 500 million or so, they're going to use this to expand their power and land portfolio, of course developing their data center infrastructure to grow their HPC side of the business, and repay any Bitcoin backed credit lines such as the one with Coinbase that they have. But check this out, the conversion rate will be 52 shares of stock per 1,000 of the convertible note offering, meaning about $19 per share of the stock. Now, likely in part because of this news and also Bitcoin showing more weakness lately, we fell right through our $16 support and fell right through this $14 area that I thought would be a potential another area of support if we break 16. We mentioned this ugly downtrend, this descending channel. It's been falling so fast it broke under the descending channel. The good news is Cleanspark is approaching oversold on the daily, although not there yet. I think we still have possibly some more pain ahead. And I think targeting the 200 MA on the daily would be a great purchase point to re-enter on Cleanspark at around $11. I'm being patient. I'm kind of in limbo mode. I would sell this if it was higher in price. I would buy it if it's lower in price. Right now, I'm just kind of waiting. If it gets towards the 200 MA at 11, I may have to purchase some Cleanspark up for the first time in quite a few months. They do have earnings approaching. They're expecting a profitable quarter like many of the Bitcoin miners have been posting. But where the problem usually lies here lately is their forward guidance. For example, with Iron's forward guidance is they see a very small growth in revenue, likely because of Bitcoin's price, because how Bitcoin has cooled off in the new quarter. So they're trying to kind of adjust their anticipations of earnings based on Bitcoin's price. Bitcoin has been in mostly a downtrend as of recently. So these companies are trying to kind of ease on their revenue expectations. Although a lot of these companies, just like Cleanspark, are expecting a very nice growth in revenue quarter to quarter in terms of this current quarter. It's the future quarters that are showing kind of a weakness in revenue growth. And if Bitcoin keeps selling off, they're going to have to post an unrealized loss on the next quarter. But you know, Cleanspark and Iron, they're my two favorite Bitcoin miners. They're the most efficient Bitcoin miners by far. I kind of like having both because one holds their Bitcoin, one sells their Bitcoin instantly. They are now both AI plays. And I do think they'll both remain the best in their class with the leading joules per terahash. They're extremely efficient Bitcoin miners. And while Cleanspark is down almost 50% from its recent highs, I think it might be a good idea to wait for lower prices, let the market digest this news fully, look for a better trend. We've obviously been falling down hard. I would look for some support first before jumping in on this. And as for Bitcoin, we need to see our weekly candle come back up over the 50 MA. This is definitely a nerve-wracking time for Bitcoin, for the Bitcoin miners that have all been showing weakness lately. But how are you guys feeling lately? Do you think Bitcoin's going to hold this 50 MA? Or is it going to continue to show weakness, find the 50 MA as a resistance, and we end this cycle early? And how are you feeling about the Bitcoin miners? Are they at a price low enough for you to start accumulating again? Or are you still waiting like I am? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.